Okay, hi everybody. We're back. And Mercury is retrograde these days. So that is on. I have to make sure that all things are on. You seem so far away, some of you. Some of you seem closer. Some of you seem farther away. But hi. You seem closer. Okay. Okay, friends, let us see. You can see the screen. That's good. And we are now beginning to work with stanza 5 of the particular stanzas of Dzyan, which are in the beginning of Cosmic Fire. So what I will do is ask you your idea. I'll be switching back and forth between, let's see, solar angel names. Okay, I can look at that. I'll be switching back and forth between the stanzas as they actually are given, and then some commentary, which I have on them. Now, I want to say that this commentary is not meant to be definitive in any way. There are so many things that these stanzas could mean, and also there are many details which are necessarily going to be left out, which the Tibetan knows full well, and anyone who knows the deeper doctrine knows full well, but for us we are not able necessarily to access them. So I will begin to read, and we will offer our interpretations and see what we come up with. So the moment Manvantaric, for which had waited all the triads, the hour that marked the solemn point of juncture, arrived within the scope of time, and lo, the work was done. What are we meaning here by the moment Manvantaric? There's a special wording here, the moment Manvantaric, and the triads had waited. Who are these triads? Where had they waited? For what had they waited? How were they formed? Now, we've studied this, correct? We've studied this together, right? So let me just get the ball rolling, all right? Oh, good. So I hear myself in echo form in the back part of the room. Okay, this particular stanza is number 5, and the ones that have preceded it, especially stanza 1, 2, and 3, have been rather macrocosmic. When we speak of macrocosmic, what do we mean? What is technically, and as it is usually stated, the macrocosm? Of course, it just means big in a way, doesn't it? Micro and macro. But technically for us, the macrocosm is what? It's outside our own ring pass knot, and that's in a general sense, very much so, yes. But generally, the macrocosm for man at the moment is most often the solar system and the solar logos. We could think that the planetary logos as well is macrocosmic, and in a way, of course, it's much bigger than we are. The planetary logos and his scheme is macrocosmic, but in a way we are very much a part of that. So the true macrocosm, well, is being, of course, the entire universe, but the true macrocosm is usually considered to be the solar system. But not in this particular case. The moment Manvantaric, now the word is Manvantara, isn't it? That's what we're dealing with. And that is a very interesting word. It means the duration of time between two manus. There is a root manu that impulses with a purpose all the life processes on a given globe or chain. And then there is the seed manu, who gathers into himself the harvest of all that has occurred. And in between is the Manvantara, or that duration of time between two manus. But there are all kinds of manus, and therefore there are a number of different kinds of Manvantaras. The kind of Manvantara here is what? Okay, so I say here that it's a protean term. I hope my I hope I'm showing my screen. Loud microphone level. Okay, cool it. Right. Okay, maybe I should move slightly away from the mic. Okay. I'm sorry. I'm okay. As long as it's okay, it will work. Okay. So what kind of Manvantara are we talking about here? Now, when we deal with the Treatise on Cosmic Fire, let's take a look at that. A telepathy initiation, a treatise. Okay. We are, I think, on page, let's see, how does that go? Approximately page 39. Let's see if that is correct. A treatise on cosmic fire, the ray of intelligent activity. I'm not sure that that is correct. Let's see, cosmic center. It is, I think it's footnote number 6 here that we're looking for. Well, here's number 5. Let's see what that gives us. No. And there is a footnote number 6, which I hope we can find. If anybody sees it, just let me know, okay? Because it seems to have, there's number 7, right? Heavens. We have number 7, but not number 6. So it's as if number 6 has been erased. Well, just look in your, do you see number? This is amazing. I don't know why the 6th footnote should be missing, because it's the one with all of those, it has all of the timing, but I'm looking right at it. And so were you. All right, here are the yugas. Okay, so look, what is a Manvantara in this context? It's a very huge period of time. It is a day of Brahma, a Manvantara under such circumstances. This is more in the solar systemic sense. One day of Brahma is one of these Manvantaras. It's one complete cycle. We are not talking about that in this case, are we? Because we are within the planetary context. Because we're talking about a particular moment which occurs in relation to our Earth scheme, Earth chain, and Earth globe, aren't we? In other words, how much can we know about what's really going on the other planets? Not a lot, right? We've been told that the planetary lore has been wisely concealed from us, but we are told something about our own planet. So there is here, it's a very protean term. It can change into many different forms. There is what is called a chain round, and I'm suggesting to us that the Manvantara involved here is a chain round and not a scheme round or a systemic round. Now, what does a round mean? It's a process that goes from point to point to point in a cycle, following a certain developmental method, and comes back to its beginning. So let us look for just a moment at some of the diagrams there. That diagram perhaps will help us understand what a chain round is. Now, if I say to you chain round or scheme round or systemic round, does it mean anything to us? Right? So here is the chain round, correct? And there is a progress from globe to globe to globe 7 times. And this is our Earth scheme here. This is, I'll try to make this a little bit bigger. There. Here we are in our Earth chain within the Earth scheme, and a chain round, although it may not move exactly sequentially, because, in your own chakra system, there's much more complexity, and this is just a chakra system. In other words, energy just doesn't go from one chakra to the next, to the next, to the next, and around. There's constant sharing of energy between your chakras, isn't there? So in the globes, in the globes of a chain, there's also constant sharing of energy. And there are all of these triangles which are operative. So what kind of physical shape would you be in if you had only one chakra operating? Not very good, right? So, in other words, the chakras are like your etheric organs coming from the monadic flow. They all have to be operating at the same time, don't they? You can't, you have to have a heart, you have to have a throat, you have to have a head, you have to have a solar plexus. All of these different areas of the etheric body have to be operating simultaneously. So, while in any one life there might be an emphasis on a particular chakra, all of them have to be operating, don't they? And thus it is, by analogy, when you're considering a planetary chain. So a chain round is the transfer of emphasis in time from one of the globes to another. Now, right now, it is our 4th globe in this 4th chain which is particularly being emphasized. Does that make sense? Okay. So then, So how many chain rounds are there in this 4th chain? 7, and every one is called a Manvantara. It's a type of Manvantara. Blavatsky has said somewhere that it's lasting some, do you know the figure? Or having read it, some 300 plus million years, every one of them. So, the question is, do they all last exactly the same, or does the spiral tighten? And does it get faster as we go in the later rounds? Now, if that is a chain round, what is a scheme round? What is a scheme round? Now, see, take a look at the entire planetary scheme. I'm not sure about the focus on this, and everything is a little bit oblong. I'm sorry. Is the focus bad, or is the focus like it always is with this machine? It's not really great, is it? And I know, but I'm afraid if I hit this thing, it's liable to. Well, maybe we'll work on that a little bit. This thing called the keystone, I wonder if it gets any better focus. Well, okay, we'll just have to leave it for the moment. I'm sorry. This is not the best. This is not the best machine. But anyway, the video will be better. Anyway, so what is the analogy? A scheme round lasts much longer, doesn't it? Okay, and what happens in a scheme round? What is the analogy to the globe? In a chain round, we have passage of emphasis from globe to globe to globe. Is that right? So in a scheme round, obviously, then the passage of emphasis is from chain to chain to chain, with all of the triangular, with all of the triangular interplay going on at the same time. All of the chakras are active, all of the chains are active, all of the globes are active, but they're active in a different way. Now, is the base of your spine center very active at this time compared to what it will be? Is your head center very active at this time compared to what it will be? Probably not, right? So other chakras are more active now, and thus it is for certain chains, and thus it is for certain globes. So there is a chain, a scheme round, which goes from chain to chain to chain 7 times. Now, what round are we in with respect to the Earth at this time? Well, that's the point, isn't it? So on our particular planetary chain, the Earth chain, what round are we in with respect to the chain itself? We're in the 4th. Now, with respect to the entire scheme, what round are we in? I think it's also the 4th. And when we are told that Venus is in its 5th round, it's a scheme round, which shows you that essentially Venus is much more developed than our Earth, because four scheme rounds and 5 scheme rounds. We're not even sure what particular chain on Venus takes the focus at this time, but we do know in general that there are 5 scheme rounds. And how many rounds will Venus have? How many rounds will Earth have? How many rounds will Venus have? Scheme rounds. Well, okay. Earth is supposed to have 7. Wherever there's a 7, there's always a 10 implied, so you never know what's going on the inner round, as it were. But Venus will only have 5 rounds. So Venus has evolved so quickly that only 5 rounds are necessary to complete its task, which is very interesting considering the 5th ray and the condition of the 5th ray lord as the brightest of all, Venus being, in a way, the brightest of all. Now, there's one other kind of round that I would like to... Now, and by the way, this thing called a scheme round, what is the other term for it? Manvantara. Again. Manvantara again. So when he says the moment Manvantara has arrived, we better know what context we are talking in, right? Now there's another kind of round which takes place on the solar systemic level. And this time the analogy operates this way. Instead of going from globe to globe to globe in what kind of round? Globe to globe to globe. Chain round. Instead of going from scheme to scheme to scheme, what kind of? And instead of going from chain to chain to chain, it's a scheme round. Now you go from what to what to what? In the solar systemic round. What do you go to? In other words, you're not going from globe to globe to globe. You're not going from chain to chain to chain. What are you doing? Scheme to scheme to scheme. And this is a systemic round. And so our solar logos is also in the middle of a round process. What round do you think our solar logos is in? From this perspective, going from scheme to scheme to scheme. Our solar logos, our solar God, is having his own type of rounds. And I'll just bet it's the 4th round. Again. These number 4s are piling up amazingly and are giving a great point of decision to our solar logos. So the moment Manvantara focuses on the fourth scheme, which is what scheme? Fourth planetary scheme is the Earth scheme. Focused on the fourth chain, which is called the Earth chain. Focuses on the fourth globe, which is called the Earth. Very good. It's called called the Earth globe. All of these fours are lining up. It's a tremendous crisis in our solar system, and it's all focused on our planet as the crisis point. And then what kingdom are we? Fourth kingdom. What creative hierarchy are we? Fourth creative hierarchy. So I think you can see how we are involved. Okay. We have to get so much of interpreting the stanzas of Dzyan is to try to get our numbers straight. When we assign the wrong number to a particular level, we're all confused, and we cannot help but be confused. He talks about the 5, the 5th, the lesser 5, the lesser 3, all of that. What does he mean? We'll try to figure that out. Okay. So, the moment Manvantara, which is probably a chain round, has arrived. The Manvantara is the interval between two manus, a root and a seed manu. We don't know whether these stanzas are immediately in sequential order. We will see as we go. For which waited all the triads. The moment Manvantara, for which waited all the triads. Now, what's that about? What had it done? It had arrived. So, who are the triads? And how are they formed? What are they? The triads. Now, as part of our system, our energy system, we have something called the what? In our energy system, the word triad is found. What do we have? We have many triads, right? But we have something specifically called a spiritual triad, don't we? What is a spiritual triad? A spiritual triad is a part of our energy system, correct? And what is the basis of the spiritual triads? When was the triad formed? When was the triad formed? So what I'm going to suggest we do here is that we go into Esoteric Psychology, Volume 1, and we turn to page 168, and we will learn something. Here it is. It will, and I will read from this, and maybe this will give us an idea of what the spiritual triad is in the technical sense and how it was formed. How many vehicles does the spiritual triad have? 3. And what are the vehicles of the spiritual triad? Yes, and the Sanskrit names are Atma, Buddhi, Manas. And so there are 3 planetary vehicles that each one of us has: the Atmic vehicle, the Buddhic vehicle, the Manasic vehicle. What is the seed of each one of those vehicles? What is the core of each one of those vehicles? They are built upon a what? Each vehicle has within it it has a center, yes, but the center is called by a particular name. Exactly. The Atmic permanent atom, the Buddhic permanent atom, the Manasic permanent atom, correct? Those are the 3 core foundational seeds of each one of those vehicles. Now, what are they? What are these permanent atoms? How did they come about? When did it all come about that we would be triads? waiting triads. When's the last time you've been a waiting triad? It was yesterday, wasn't it? After lunch, right? Okay. All right. Now, each one of us is a spark divine. The very essence of our being, the central spark of the divine in each one of us, may be said to belong to one or other of the 7 rays. And this may be spoken of as a man's primary ray. What has he just said about how many monadic rays there are? How many are there? He just said 7, didn't he? Each one of us, as a central spark divine, belongs to one or other of the 7 rays. 7 monadic rays of a particular type. This will be very important in this interpreting this stanza. So, but yet you're quite right. There are only 3 monadic rays. How can there be 7? Well, as we've spoken of before, there seem to be 2 levels of monadic rays. Maybe one of them belongs to the monadic plane where we have 7. Maybe another belongs to what plane? I'll show you a chart. Look at this chart. This is chart number 5, page 344. Look at the monadic plane, look at the logoic plane. What do you see? How are the numbers stacking up on the you have 7 and 3. So maybe it's true that there are 7 monadic rays, but maybe they condense into 3 after all. Correct? Because ray 3 contains how many rays? Okay, in other words, well, okay, 5 in itself, right? In other words, the first 3 rays are called rays of aspect. Rays of aspect. And the next 4 rays are rays of attribute. So the 3rd ray contains all of these rays of attribute. And maybe what we're looking here is that fundamentally there are 3 types of liberated monads. First, second, and 3rd ray, liberated from what? What does a monad need to be liberated from? Or I could say, let's make the analogy. At the 4th initiation, what type of liberation occurs? What is liberated from what? At the 4th initiation. Well, okay, the soul body is gone. So that the spirit aspect that was in the soul body is liberated from the soul body, correct? And then it moves in ways which are only hinted at into the spiritual triad. What happens at the 6th initiation? You become free of what? Not yet. Because you never be free of the monad because you are the monad. Okay. So at the 6th initiation, you become free, if you will, of 5 whats. In other words, let's look at the map. This is like a big test, isn't it? I'm giving you a test, right? I'll let you know how you did. All right. At the 6th initiation, you become centralized in your what? In your, speak loud. Remember that not only am I hard of hearing, but I have earphones on. You become centralized, at the 6th initiation, become centralized in what? In the monadic vehicle. The temple of Ezekiel, on the sixth or second plane, the monadic plane. And what do you drop, if you will? You can drop what? You can drop the lower permanent atoms, and you can absorb them into yourself. At the seventh initiation, what happens with respect to your monadic self? Say it again? Yes. What do you drop? You drop something. You drop the monadic vehicle. Your temple of Ezekiel is broken, and you are a free monad, relatively free. And where is your home now? It's on the screen. Your home is where? You're building a house somewhere. Where do you go? Out in the blue. Well, that's a good way of describing it. Out into the blue. Where do you go? You go. Where is my? Here it is. You go here. Right? Who's living here now? Anyone you know? Okay. The Christ is living there. The Buddha is living there. Hercules is living there. Sanat Kumara, the three Buddhas of activity, they're all living there. I don't know on what subplanes of the logoic plane, but that's the free monad, ready to take a trip. Okay? So on to the logoic plane. Okay, so now let's get back to the text. All the triads have been waiting for this moment. Where are the triads waiting? Obviously on the triadal levels, correct? The triads are waiting there. What does it say? It will be remembered that the first great outpouring from the Logos, and that's the Solo Logos, vivified universal substance and caused every atom of matter within the ring-pass knot of his system to vibrate in 7 different measures of vibration. Now, basically, the first outpouring is connected with what aspect of divinity? Is it the first aspect? Third aspect of divinity. What plane does this what planes does this first outpouring touch? What subplanes? Only the first subplanes. Only. The atomic subplanes only, and 7 different types of matter are created on the 7 atomic subplanes. Now, we wait for the second outpouring. What aspect of divinity is the second outpouring associated with? Obviously, the second. Correct? Okay. Here comes the second outpouring. Now, remember, we are planetary spirits as we are studying these stanzas, right? Forget being a person. Drop your personhood at the door. You are now a planetary spirit. Okay? So this is of deep interest to you. The second outpouring caused molecular combinations, thus forming the 6 subplanes below the atomic on each plane and produced form. The form-building ray is what ray particularly? The second ray is the form-building ray. But the ray which differentiates matter is the third. Of course, you could look in a way, if you want to, you could say, every aspect is in every other aspect, so every little atom is really a form anyway. But we're talking about forms which are aggregations of atoms. So the atoms have to be created by the first outpouring given the third aspect. So now here comes the form-producing second aspect. And look at what it does. It causes molecular combinations on the 6 lower subplanes of each plane. Now we have 2 kinds of essence One type of essence is called monadic essence, and the other is called elemental essence. Very good. Okay, monadic essence is located where? Monadic essence is located on the what subplane? Atomic. Atomic, and it's non-molecular. Elemental essence is located where? On the 6 subplanes, and it is molecular. Okay. It was at this time of the second outpouring. Now, this is the important thing. What is the divine center of consciousness? That's you, right? What's another name for divine center of consciousness? You'll like this name. Begins with an M, ends with a D. Monad, yes. Okay. A divine center of consciousness is a monad. Okay. So this is in an earlier book, and or it's in a book more for the general public, and so he's using these other terms. It was at this time of the second outpouring, that each of the divine centers of consciousness, aka you as a monad, each of the divine centers of consciousness put forth a thread of being. How interesting term. Put forth a thread of being into an atom of the highest subplanes of the atmic, the buddhic, and the monastic planes. And here's the point. Atoms destined to be the nuclei of the future bodies, each on its respective plane, and therefore forming the upper triad so often referred to. So that is the formation of the spiritual triad. That's when it happened. When did it happen? During the what? Your spiritual triad was formed by you as a divine center of consciousness. At what point? The second outpouring. That's when you became a spiritual triad. That's when you appropriated a vehicle called the spiritual triad. That's when you as a monad linked up with an atom on the atomic level of the atmic, buddhic, and monastic plane, which was to become the nucleus of a future vehicle which you are now organizing. How organized is our abstract mind right now? Could be a little more organized. Could be a little more organized. So how coordinated is our buddhic vehicle right now? A little more coordinated. So let's wait and see. After the third initiation under Neptune comes a particular attempt to coordinate the buddhic vehicle. How organized and coordinated and coherent is our atmic vehicle? DK says we don't know much about will at all. So probably our atmic vehicle is not all that coordinated. So basically what we're saying here, we are triads, absolutely. Ever since the second outpouring, we have had an atmic permanent atom, a buddhic permanent atom, a monastic permanent atom, but we've had no really fully functioning vehicles built upon those atoms. But now that we're building the Antakarana, there's hope, right? We're building the Antakarana, so what is going to be the result of that monastically? 3 minds unite, remember? That is the word of power of what ray? Fifth ray? 3 minds unite, meaning we are now, through the Antakarana and studies of this nature, which can drive you crazy, I admit, we are coordinating the abstract mind. Correct? That's what we're doing now. Upon the monastic permanent atom, we are building a higher mental body, which is even beyond that of the soul, isn't it? Because it's part of the spiritual triad. And some of us who are venturing into the realm of intuition are building a what? What vehicle? Buddhic vehicle, especially after the 3rd degree. And I wouldn't be surprised if after the 4th degree the atmic vehicle particularly, is emphasized because the will of the master focused on the atmic plane is what becomes important. Okay, now we have covered so far 2 parts of 1 sentence. Is this how you proceed in your study group? Not exactly. I'll bet you even read a sentence through, don't you? Well, we are subjecting this to minute analysis. Okay, so here's what we have. The moment Manvantara, in the 4th round on the 4th chain, for which all triads, all triads formed in the 2nd outpouring and waiting upon what planes? Atmic, Buddhic, and monastic planes. That hour that marked the solemn point of juncture had arrived. Now, what does the word solemn mean? Yeah. See, it says when you're solemn, you don't laugh. It's serious. This is a very sorry. Did you say sinister? No, sinister has the idea of evil connected with it, because sinistra means the left hand. Dexter, sinister. So this just means serious, important, planetarily important point of juncture. What does the word juncture mean? Coming together. A serious point of coming together had arrived within the scope of time. And lo, when you say the word lo, what does that mean? L-O. See, when you say, oh, look at that, that means like, oh, lo. Oh, I see it. I perceive. Like, did you say alas? Alas. Well, alas means like a sigh. If only it had been otherwise. Alas is a term of regret. I wish, but low is not like being L-O-W, low down. It means, oh, look at that. It means I see, I perceive. Wow, it's happening in front of my eyes, and lo, the work was done. What word is that? Hooray, hooray, oh, hurrah. Okay. You learned this in England. All right. If you had said hooray, I would have seen it immediately. Okay. It means it is to be perceived. Lo means, now I can perceive it, the work is done. Okay, very good. The triads are ready to do something. Now, all of us have been spiritual triads. We haven't necessarily been spiritual triads in this particular round only. Some were on a different chain and were triads on a different chain or even a different solar system, but all of us, if you look at what our essence is, we are Atma Buddhi Manas. We are spiritual will, spiritual love, and spiritual intelligence. That's our upper triadal nature. Okay. Now, let's see if there's anything else that is said here. All right. This solemn point of juncture may be the moment in history, the history of the 4th chain, when the higher triad is to join with the lower triad. The lower triad has been working through the animal kingdom, the mineral kingdom, and the vegetable kingdom. Now, in the secret doctrine, there are terms which are kind of awkward terms, but it's called like the following: the immetalization of the monad, the invegetalization of the monad, the inzoonation of the monad. What does that mean? See, the monad is working through what? The monad has as its instruments, as its points of focus on every plane, what does the monad have in order to build vehicles? The monad has 5 permanent atoms, doesn't it? And eventually 1 mental unit. So that makes 6. So does the monad immediately become the man? No, right? The monad does not immediately become a man, but because before the monad can become a man, what does it have to do? Immetallization of the monad. What does that suggest to you? Is it inmetallization or immetallization? I can't remember how she does it. I think it's two M's. Immetallization, the monad does what? The monad manifests through what kingdom? First, mineral kingdom. Immetallization of the monad. You know, in terms of a group manifestation. It's not like one atom per monad. It's through a whole grouping of mineral forms. Then there is the vegetalization of the monad. The monad manifests through what kingdom? Vegetable. Then what happens? Then up to the animal kingdom, right? And the forms become, as it were, less and less, fewer and fewer, through which one monad manifests. You know, it goes like a pyramid. Many, many forms, many, many mineral forms that a monad would manifest through. Fewer vegetable forms, still fewer animal forms, until we reach a point where one highly developed animal man, not yet individualized, is producing a mental unit. And it is that lower triad that the monad, working through its upper triad, is going to join with. This is the solemn juncture. Two triads are coming together. What are the triads? Which triads are coming together now? One is called, the upper one is called spiritual triad. The lower one is called the personal triad, or the triad operative, just the lower triad. It consists of a physical permanent atom, and hence it has a mineral aspect. It consists of a astral permanent atom, and it is connected with vegetative growth, and it also has a mental unit which animates the ever more intelligent animal nature. The lower and the higher triad are about to come together. This is the solemn point of juncture. And in this particular story, it happened how many years ago? Okay, well, so now comes an important question, because you said what I thought you would say. We cannot say that it happened 18 million and a half years ago. The truer date for this happening is when? What did you say? Last October, did you say? Oh, sorry. Okay. 21 million years ago. Okay. You'll have to speak up. Be brave. I'm deaf. Be brave. Okay. 21. Okay. Approximately. DK gives a figure, 21,600,000 and something thousand. He 345. He gives some figure. Okay. This is the solemn point of juncture. And lo, the work was done. Now, what is this work? What is the nature of the work? What is being created here at this solemn point of juncture? What is being created? Two things are coming together. You already exist. Who are you? You're the monad. Who are you? You're the triad. But are you a soul? In the sense that we use the word soul now? No, you're not. So what's being created? A soul vehicle and a personality vehicle operating through an animal man who has been individualized. So this whole story, number 5, is the story of individualization. That's what this is about. Now, how much time does DK spend in his books talking about individualization? a lot, doesn't he? He's constantly discussing this idea of individualization, isn't he? So this is this, the stanza from the of the Dzyan, which is the root of all of his discussion. Okay, so what's the big job? Create a human being. That's the work. Create a human being. And it shows you how interesting where it all started from. Now, if you ask the average human being, average person, how was a human being created, what are they going to tell you? It's it's not this story, is it? It's not starting from the very, very high levels, is it? But the human being wouldn't exist as a self-conscious being unless it began from the monad, worked through the triad, and went lower. It's not an animal happening, is it? Not strictly an animal happening. Okay, now comes this marvelous statement. The hour for which the 7 groups perusic, each vibrant to the sounding of the word, seeking the adding of the power, had waited for millennia, passed in a flash of time, and lo, the work was done. What does this mean to us? Are we still happy we're studying the Stanzas of Dzyan? Okay. The hour means, of course, that point in planetary time when the process is due. The appointed moment. The hour. Who are the 7 groups perusic, and why are these 7 groups perusic? What does this mean to us when we say the 7 groups perusic? I'm really going to try to hear you. 7 groups perusic. Who are they? Purusha. Okay, Purusha has a partner called Prakriti. So therefore, Purusha and Prakriti are what? What is Prakriti? It's a Sanskrit term that means Prakriti is Prakriti is matter. Isn't that Prakriti? And things that are Prakritic are made of matter. So Prakriti is matter, and if Prakriti is matter and has a partner called Purusha, who's Purusha? Have you heard of the great duality called blank and matter? Spirit. Yes. Spirit. So Purusha is spirit. They say no bigger than the tip of your thumb. Well, this is how the ancient Hindus described it. Okay. So, I'm sorry? If it was the 7 groups Prakritic, it would be the 7 planes. Because the planes are material. But the 7 groups Perusic, okay, let's turn to Letters on Occult Meditation, and we'll go to page 39. Do you see anything there that might resemble the 7 groups Perusic? What do you see? 7 great groups on the monadic plane. That's what the 7 groups Perusic means. So if you think of it, Purusha is the word for spirit, and spirit is the word for monad. The 7 monadic groups, the 7 groups Perusic. Okay. The 7 groups Perusic, each vibrant to the sounding of the word. Now, let's take a look here. Okay. These 7 groups are often referred to in a treatise on cosmic fire because generally, if you read Cosmic Fire, you will get the impression that there are 7 different types of monads and they form part of 7 great groups. If you read other books, he emphasizes the 3 types of monads. But in Esoteric Psychology Volume 2, there's a story of 7 blessed ones. What is a blessed one? You remember the blessed ones? They are and yet they are not. They flash into form and yet they have no form. All of that when we studied esoteric psychology together, right? So DK's story of the monad is found in the blessed ones in Esoteric Psychology number 2. Thus can the angel of the presence, who is the shadow of the blessed one, reveal the lighted way, reveal the open door. Let's see, I guess what I'm trying to say is that a blessed one is a jiva. What is a jiva? We've heard the Sanskrit term jiva, correct? So the jiva is the part of the monad that goes down into matter and makes the pilgrimage, even while the other part of the monad stays at home, as it were. So this, there are 7 types of jivas, 7 types of blessed ones, and one day we awaken to the fact that we, the jiva, the experiencing pilgrim, are actually the blessed one on the higher planes. We're actually monads. We awaken to that fact. And we awaken to the fact that we are a member of one of 7 groups on the monadic plane. Now, remember, we saw this before in this diagram. We are one of these, we are part of one of these 7 groups. Each one of us has a home in one of these 7 groups, and each one of these 7 groups is sounding a word within the greater word of the planetary logos. The interesting thing is, you know the term akasha, and the substance that is found on the 2nd subplane is called akasha. It's sometimes used in a larger sense, but akasha is very much located on the 2nd subplane. There's a word sounding for each monadic group within the great planetary logoic word. 7 words, 3 words, 1 word. So when we get back to this point, the hour for which the 7 groups perusic, each vibrant to the sounding of the word. One great planetary word is sounding, and in a special way, your monadic group is responding to that sound, forming its own word within the greater word. So there is a great sound in our monad, and it's connected to the great word of the planetary logos. The word is a creative agent, right? When a word sounds, form is built, isn't it so? You've seen some of those experiments where geometrical configurations are made with the sounding of certain notes. And you've seen what the Om does and the kind of pattern that it creates. So the word, the sound is formative. And each one of our monadic groups has a particular design, a particular sound, a particular geometry. And that's so deep in us that we are trying to make that happen in the outer worlds, even though we've forgotten what the sound is and what the design is. Okay. So the 7 groups perusic, each vibrant to the sounding of the word. The 7 great sounds of the monadic plane. Okay. The old commentary is here suggesting that there is a word to be associated with each of these monadic groups. For the moment, that is what we are assuming they are. 7 great sounds sound forth on the monadic plane, but they are all part of one fundamental word. Okay, so that's the word. From the monad, we hear what comes forth from the monad is generally called the sound. There is the word, the sound. There's the sound, the word, and many words. What is the sound? We have the ah, the oo, the the au, aum. We have the o, we have the om. Now, normally, on the monadic plane, there's something called the sound. And it's one of those syllables that I just went through. It's not the om per se. Because when you add an M, what happens to a vowel? It becomes confined, right? A consonant is like a wall. It confines the flowing vowel, right? Okay. So generally, when we talk about the sound of the monad, it is, what is the planet? What is the planet that rules the monadic plane? Here, I'll show you. Did you say Saturn? What did you say? Okay, just hang in there. Nobody said this was going to be easy. What planet rules the monadic plane? It's on the screen. It's a big planet. Yes. Yes, well, yes, that's right. We have proof we can read. This is good. Jupiter rules the monadic plane. What is the vowel associated with Jupiter? There's a vowel. A-E-I-O-U. One of those. It's the O. The O is associated with Jupiter coming from the monadic plane. The O is generally considered to be the sound in this solar system. So each one of those big monadic groups is like a big O under Jupiter, sounding a particular variety of the O. So the sound goes forth from the monadic plane. And a particular sound peals forth once a sufficient grade of evolution has been reached. In other words, this doesn't apply in later evolution unless we have reached the point where the monad can be contacted. So there is a great sound coming from the monadic plane, and there are 7 particularized sounds according to the 7 monadic rays. All right. So now here we go on. The hour for which the 7 groups perusic, every time now that you see 7 groups perusic, you're going to know exactly what it is, right? 7 monadic groupings of which you are in a particular grouping. Now, which one? That we have yet to determine. Each vibrant to the sounding of the word, the great word, and a particularization of that word, seeking the adding of the power. Now, what power could we possibly be talking about? The groups perusic, vibrating to the great word, seek the adding of the power. What kind of power? What does the monad need? What does the monad need? It needs some experience, doesn't it? Now we're going to learn about how the stone gathers color, form, beauty, and all that. The monad has great power on the higher planes, but it doesn't have experience in the lower elemental worlds, and so it is the power to express within these lower worlds that is to be gathered by the great monadic pilgrimage, where the jiva goes forth on that great journey and comes around again as the prodigal son. The jiva and the prodigal son are one. Okay, the groups had waited for millennia. Well, why are they waiting so long? What are they waiting for? They have to be very patient, you know. You as a monad have tremendous amount of patience. They're waiting for what? For the right astrology, okay. Fresh out of an astrology class, of course. Okay, look, there's the first outpouring where matter is prepared, right? So they have to wait all through that, okay? Then there's the second outpouring where the permanent atoms are attached to the monad, but they're still waiting. What are they waiting for? Here. Well, okay, but they get busy. They get busy a little earlier on. They don't have to wait for the third. For the attention. It's okay. It felt like a joke. Didn't understand it, but you know, it's good. Okay. So here I want to show you a diagram. Here it is. This is the outpouring diagram. See? First outpouring, vertical down. Second outpouring, round we go. The second outpouring is a big oval or a big circle or a big, you know, it's this journey. It's a loop. What are those monads waiting for? Can they do anything on the first half of the loop except grab a permanent atom or two or three and hover? But now, what happens once the turn is made? Mineralization, vegetalization, zoonation, they have to wait until they have passed through the mineral, vegetable, and animal kingdoms. And only once they have passed through the animal kingdom on its upper levels is the time for which they've been waiting arriving. Only then. The triads wait through all that time before it is possible for the actual link of the monad to be made with the uprising, aspiring animal nature. The time for the formation of the human kingdom has come. Okay. All right. The hour for which the seven groups perusic, each vibrant to the sounding of the word, seeking the adding of the power of experience, had waited for millennia, and not just millennia, millions of years, billions of years, passed in a flash of time, and lo, the work was done. Okay. Now, let's go on. I also suggest here that we may interpret this phrase as suggesting that when the monad sends another part of itself forth to form the jewel in the lotus and the human kingdom, it is for the purpose, among other purposes, of adding power, and I will say, through experience in the lower three worlds. Okay, we've done a few sentences now. Just hang in there. So how long was this period through which it was waiting? How long, you know, scientists say that our Earth is some 4 billion years old, and the very first precipitation was the molten mineral kingdom. This lasted a very long time before the vegetable kingdom came about. The animal kingdom is very recent. Presumably, there is experience in earlier rounds. This is a very interesting idea because it may be that the monad has to wait through the first, second, third rounds before in the fourth round it can really come into its own. It has to wait for the formation of these different kingdoms in the different rounds. So HPB tells us that the third round was a big animal round. I'm assuming the first round was very much given to the mineral kingdom and the second round to the vegetable kingdom. And then they continued on being brought into the next kingdom successively. Each kingdom being built upon a lesser. Okay, what's happening? Okay. So, when did the second outpouring occur? Because it was at this second outpouring and the turning of the loop that the monad comes into contact with the uprising life of the second round. It all passed in a flash of time, and lo, the work was done. So this stanza speaks of the suddenness of the process of forming the egoic lotus, and presumably the individualization of man. And yet, other references tell us that the egoic lotus was formed over a very long period of time, and the following quotation suggests this. This is from Cosmic Fire, page 768. The process of forming the egoic lotus has gone on silently from the moment that the lower animal man, or the lower four principles, and they are what? Lower Manas, Kama, Etheric Vehicle, and Prana. Those are the lower four principles. From the moment that animal man, or the lower four principles, had reached a point where the energy generated by him could begin to make itself felt on mental levels, from that time on, the egoic lotus was forming. But the real link had not occurred. The real vivification of the lotus, the real coming of the solar angels in fuller power had not yet occurred. Okay, are there any questions up to this point? Like, there you are. Okay, so did you discuss this in your study group? You got this far, right? Yeah. Okay, you dealt with these matters. All right. So what I'm talking about here is nothing new. Okay, very good. All right, now let us go forward a little bit. We're going to stop at 11, you can be sure, and you're going to need a break. So let's read what we have had so far. Let's just review it. The moment Manvantara, for which had waited all the triads, the hour that marked the solemn point of juncture, arrived within the scope of time, and lo, the work was done. The hour for which the seven groups perusic, each vibrant to the sounding of the word, a big planetary word goes forth, which says, now it's time to do this, because it's time for the planetary heart to wake up. And that's always when the solar angels come in, when the planetary heart is awakening, okay? The hour for which the seven groups perusic, each vibrant to the sounding of the word, seeking the adding of the power, had waited for millennia, passed in a flash of time, and lo, the work was done. So what do you gather from this? Individualization has nothing personal in it. It's a planetary process. And it comes due to the will of the planetary logos, doesn't it? And the planetary logos is simply following the will of whom in doing so? Solar logos. Because it all has to do with an initiation through which the solar logos is passing. And incidentally, the planetary logos, and incidentally, man, coming into his first great initiation, which is being born. Being born is a great initiation. The human kingdom is being born in this stanza. Okay. Now, was there anything that you arrived at in your group discussion which was different from this, or which had other lines of consideration, other points that may have emerged? With initiation. Creation, yeah. It has to do with the creation of the human kingdom. Now, the second stanzas of Dzyan has to do with creation of the whole solar system. And we'll deal with that. But first, we're dealing with things that are a little more concrete. We all came into being long ago. Now, here's the issue. Were we part of this? Maybe. Maybe. Yes, in a way, because how might we not have been part of this? What if we were individualized on the moon chain? This is all about earth chain individualization with the intervention of the solar angels, right? So what if we were not earth humanity? What if we weren't even individualized in this solar system? Does anybody remember? How was it in the previous solar system? Was anybody? I'm expecting a report, yes? Okay. Well, there was a previous incarnation of our solar logos, and it was not this solar system. But many of the same players were there in a different form. It just so basically the method of individualization on the moon chain, was it the same as on the earth chain? Well, DK does talk about it. There was no intervention of the solar angels in the previous method of individualization on the moon chain. Animal man aspired, and the spirit aspect in his own nature responded to the aspiration over vast periods of time. No intervention of solar angels. And this is all about solar angels, isn't it? I mean, who are the watching ones? Some of those watching ones are solar angels, aren't they? So this is specifically about individualization in our Earth scheme, on the Earth chain, and particularly on the Earth globe. This is very specific. Okay. Now we come into some problems, as if everything up to this point has been very clear. I trust. I just know that when you hear those words, 7 groups perusic, you're going to wake up. I wonder how would we translate that into Danish? You can use the perusic word. It's okay. All you need is the 7 groups. Okay. Now we come to a problem because we don't know what we're talking about. Suddenly we have a funny thing that said, the first degree in mighty acclamation, deeming the hour propitious, sounded the triple note in threefold reverberation. The echo reached the goal. They 3 times sent it forth. Restless the sphere of blue felt the vibration, and answering roused herself. That's deliberate. It's not himself, it's herself. And hastened to the call. Are these meaningless words? Would having a break help the interpretation of these words? Wait. We have 3 minutes before our break. Propitious. Yeah, let's first of all, since, you're Danish and this is an unusual form of English, it's not modern English at all. Remember that the Tibetan very likely he seemed to know English better than any of the other masters, and I think he had, I would say, it's my estimation, a kind of Elizabethan English incarnation. His language is of that type, coming from that era. So that's a hint. And he writes in that way. Alice Bailey had a much more modern idea of English, and together they worked out a different method of English than the Tibetan began to speak with. Okay. Now let's see what we might find here. Now you see this requires what I would call philosophical patience to do this work with the stanzas of Dzyan. Maybe some of you have studied the Tibetan for many years before really looking at the stanzas of Dzyan. Is that possible? It certainly was so for me. I looked at them and I looked away. I may have read through them and said, oh my, I say, I'll get to those one day. Okay. But now we see why it's so challenging to deal with these. Yes. Well, but look, of course, the word Purusha is Sanskrit, so they're just making an adjective out of it. That's all. He keeps the same Sanskrit word. So the word Purusha is not used. Danish too. Okay, so that's Nil's translation, and he kept the word perusic. Good. That's what you should do. Okay. All right. Now, the first degree in mighty acclamation, deeming the hour propitious, sounded the triple note in threefold reverberation. What does the first degree suggest to us? I puzzled over this a long time. I'm not sure I'm not sure I have it at all, but I have some ideas. The first degree, now first of all, what does the word acclamation mean? When you sound forth a word, you do it authoritatively, with full voice, with full power, so that it is proclaimed, it is acclaimed. In other words, you're not just speaking. You're sounding the word forth with great will and force behind it. That's what's meant by mighty acclamation. So obviously, we're dealing with the first aspect of divinity, aren't we? There are two types of disciples on the first ray. Do you know what they are called? We've studied this in the methods of service in esoteric psychology too. For the first ray, what are the two types of first ray disciples? Well, will and power are two aspects of the first ray, and you could say that. But you're familiar with the idea of the destroyer, aren't you? Some of those upon the first ray are the destroyers. So through they serve the plan through destruction. But there's another type of first ray type, another first ray type. What is it? Do you remember? They're called the enunciators. Does that come back to you? The enunciators? Okay, let's just take a quick look here. Esoteric Psychology 2, and let's just say, let's see, destroyers, service, methods of service. I wonder how we can do that. Vocal. Yes. Here it is. I'll find it. Ray 2. Here they go. Some of the masters of the wisdom and the group of disciples are actively engaged at this time in an effort to impose certain basic and needed ideas upon the race of men, and much of their work is being prepared for by the group of destroying disciples, first ray, and also by a group of enunciating disciples. They proclaim the principle by which the new must be organized. So they forcefully push forward the idea in forms of speech. The group of destroyers, here, the idea to be dominant in the future is proclaimed. You know, I said acclamation, proclamation, they're very similar, English words. The idea to be dominant in the future is proclaimed in writing and by voice by one group, the enunciating disciples, on the first ray. The group of destroyers takes it up and proceeds to break up the old forms of truth so as to make room and way for the new emerging ideas. So the enunciating disciples push forward the new idea, first ray. So now when we come back to this, the first degree in mighty acclamation, deem the hour propitious, sounded the triple note in threefold reverberation. So something is being pushed forward by the first ray, but who are these first degree? Who are they? Usually when you think of the first degree in terms of initiation, what do you think of? First degree initiation. It's low, isn't it? It's the lowest. But not here. No. Here it's the highest. First degree, second degree, third degree. Normally in our initiations, it's first degree, second degree, third degree. But here we're starting from the top. Maybe we're starting from the logoic plane. Remember, individualization is a planetary process under the guidance of Sanat Kumara, the Lord of the World, whose area of expression is found where on this map? I'm looking at it, right? The council chamber is found on the very highest of the cosmic physical planes. Maybe Sanat Kumara alone is focused on the highest atomic subplane of the logoic plane. Maybe the three Buddhas of activity are there too. But anyway, not all beings who are on the seventh or the highest subplane here are focused, not all beings who are focused on the logoic plane are focused on the highest subplane of the logoic plane. Sanat Kumara necessarily must be. And that's where this mighty acclamation is coming forth. Now, I can't say that I can identify who the first degree is. I just know they are very high beings. And they carry a tremendous amount of will and authority, and they proclaim through a threefold vibration a process which starts everything going. Okay, so what I've said here, sometimes we are told of the manner in which the planetary logos, cooperating with the solar logos, prepared for activation of the solar angels within the Earth scheme, and particularly upon the Earth chain of the Earth scheme. But really we are not told very much of a specific nature. This has to do with the planetary logos preparing for the activation of the solar angels, this mighty acclamation. Now, where do the solar angels come from? Well, yes and no, right? One of the places we're told, when they are liberated at the fourth initiation, where do they return? They don't go back to Venus, do they? Where do the solar angels go? We're right in a certain respect, but we're missing one point. Where do the solar angels go when liberated at the fourth initiation? The heart of the sun. And some of them back to the central spiritual sun. And later they're going to be breathed forth in groups from the sun to form what? They will be breathed. Their next evolutionary step is? Well, we go to Sirius. We who are to become solar angels go to Sirius. Some of us. Take a look here. Here it is. So basically, the solar Petries, the highest three groups will become major planetary logoi. The lowest three groups, the lower three groups will become minor planetary logoi. So I'm just trying to figure out how I can make this a little bit bigger. So anyway, there it is. And human beings go to Sirius to be breathed out as solar angels. So in other words, these beings, these solar Petries, they are breathed back into the heart of the sun when they are finished with their human responsibility. Now, with the term first degree, we are not speaking of the low initiates, as humanity hasn't even been created yet. So, as I say, we're talking about a collection of very high beings, of very high spiritual status in relation to the planetary logos. And I want to say, perhaps these are beings which are found upon the first or logoic plane. Anyway, they endorse the process. I ask here, could the term first degree relate to monads of the first ray? Possibly. This is possible if this possibility can be entertained if we find there are 7 degrees. Well, maybe not even. Maybe that's not necessary. Not necessary. The term mighty acclamation, does it suggest proceeding from the logoic plane? I think so. We don't know if we don't know who the first degree is, but I believe they are shambolic beings who say, go ahead, here's the power of our word, it's time for individualization to occur. Now, they could be monadic groupings, and if they were monadic groupings, the first degree, the second degree, the third degree, they might come from the logoic plane. But if we are dealing only with 3 types of monads, then the logoic plane could be the origin. Like I showed you in this map, I know at the moment I'm wandering into something where you're wondering why I'm there. But in this map, there are only 3 types of monads on the logoic plane. And maybe all of these fiats are coming from these 3. Maybe not. I don't know the origin of these 3 degrees, but I know they are tall, they are great beings connected with the first, second, and third aspect. And I can prove that. And I will after we take our break. But if we are dealing only with 3 types of monads, then the logoic plane could be the origin. Okay. The hour was right in relation to the planets of the solar logos. A triple note is sounded forth. Triplicity suggests the creative process because the number 3 is the ray of creative intelligence. 3 and creativity go together. And then each member of the triplicity is threefold, and I will show this in relation to cosmic fire and the structure of the triad. Show this in relation to TCF, page 177. Okay, so before we go on our break, we will just remind ourselves that mighty beings, perhaps on the logoic plane, maybe monadic types, are deeming the hour propitious. Remember, they're not, monadic types. The hour is right, and they sound a triple note which reverberates 3 times. And I will show you something on the structure of the spiritual triad, which is 9-fold, which accounts for this 3 times 3. All right, it's time to stagger out of here and go have a cup of coffee. Okay. Okay, very good. I will review this and we will take it up in about 15 minutes. Okay, friends, we are proceeding slowly, carefully, hopefully. And some of you are awake in various places. Some of you are simply signed in. And we will continue with this stanza dealing with individualization and the various types of lives which promoted this individualization. Right now we're dealing with the first degree, the second degree, and the third degree, 3 great orders of lives who are sending forth a sound which the solar angels or the watching ones will capture, and upon the basis of which they will act. As far as locating these these 3 degrees, that is more difficult. They can be essential monadic types of the first, second, and third degrees, or they can be orders of lives. Higher, middling, and lower orders of high lives. It's difficult for me to pinpoint exactly what they are. I don't think I can do that. I can just say they are coming from the cosmic ethers, and they are promoting the individualization process by alerting the solar angels that they must take action. Okay, we're going to take a 15-minute break. If you are signed in, don't sign out. Just leave your computer on, and then you'll be able to resume at any time that is convenient for you when you wake up or whatever you do. That will be possible. The first degree in mighty acclamation, deeming the hour propitious, sounded the triple note in threefold reverberation. What we're going to see is that this is going to affect the planes of the spiritual triad. First the atmic, then the buddhic, then the monastic plane. These great words sounding forth affect the planes of the triad, and we will discuss that. I realize that I've written out here, even though it's a bit sketchy, things in greater detail than may be possible to deal with in a class. So I'll have to do a little bit of skipping around and a little bit of generalizing, but everything that I've written out here, even though sketchy, will be available to you, and it can be studied if you wish. And now a little Earl Grey tea or something like that would be helpful. So just hang in there. We'll be back in 15 minutes. Recording here. Very good. Well, this is, one of these problems. He uses a word like first degree. And it has to do with the first ray. You suspect that it has to do with the power of the first plane or with monads on that type of ray. Or it could have to do with categories of beings. Let's say there are stratas of beings. Well, it could even, goodness me, I can see that it could even have to do with the different creative hierarchies, namely the first, second, and third. That's also possible. So there's about 4 different things that this first degree could mean. But what we have to be able to do is generalize. We have to be able, whoops, I better put on my headset. I forgot that. I'm probably very distant. We have to be able to generalize and say that high beings, under the impression of the planetary logos, lent their power to the process of individualization and prepared the way for the solar angels to enter and begin their work. See, in other words, this is telling us what happened before the solar angels actually got busy and did what they do. This is the planetary preparation before the solar angels are activated. Okay, hopefully that means something to us. Excuse me. So, as I say, I would like to be able to locate these beings. I can only say that they come from the cosmic ethers. Do they come from the logoic plane? Possibly. Do they come from the monadic plane? Possibly. Are they monadic types? Possibly. Are they the 3 higher creative hierarchies? Maybe less likely. Maybe less likely. We go on to the second part. A triple note is sounded. Let's go over here to where it talks about that. A triple, sounded in triple note in 3-fold reverberation. Now I'm going to show you a structure on the cosmic ethers which makes one believe that conditions within the spiritual triad are being set up so that the solar angels can come in and do their work. That's what I think this is all about. And 3 times they sent it forth. The triple note, and 3 times they sent it forth. Restless the sphere of blue, felt the vibration, and answering roused herself and hastened to the call. Okay, we have to try to understand what is being said here. Now, it's also possible, I suggested, that we may be dealing with the threefold egoic lotus and the preparation of the egoic lotus, but I think that's more left to the solar angels themselves. The egoic lotus is actually threefold, is it not? It's fivefold, it's fourfold, it's threefold. If we want to make the egoic lotus threefold, how do we look at it to make it threefold? Let's see if I can find this. Here's the picture of the egoic lotus. In what way is it threefold? Well, yes, of course, the three aspects of divinity, of course, that's true. But now let's look at the structures. Sometimes the jewel in the lotus and the three surrounding synthesis petals are considered as one unit, aren't they? Because it's oftentimes called sort of the center of the lotus, and DK does not necessarily differentiate the jewel in the lotus from the three surrounding petals. Sometimes he doesn't. He looks at this as kind of an internal first ray aspect of the lotus. Then the second aspect of the lotus would be the 9 petals themselves, the 9 ordinary petals. So that's 2 aspects, right? Now, what is the third aspect of the egoic lotus? To consider it threefold. Have we left anything out? Is anything missing? We have the jewel and the bud considered as one unit. And then we have the 9 petals, and what's missing? There's something missing. Well, what we're missing is the atomic triangle. The atomic triangle is found at the base of the lotus, consisting of the mental unit, astral and mental permanent atom. Astral and physical permanent atoms. And that's the third aspect. So the jewel and central bud is considered the first aspect of the lotus. The 9 petals are considered the second aspect, and the atomic triangle is considered the third aspect. So, our question here, are we dealing with the formation of the egoic lotus? But I tend to think that that is not so much what's happening here. I think it requires the activation of the solar angels before we can really create an egoic lotus, because in the creation of the egoic lotus, what actually happens? How does the lotus form? Who's responsible for the form of the lotus per se? The solar angels are. And they infiltrate or send their energy into or send themselves into the matter of the higher mental plane. And then the geometry, they mold themselves into a kind of subtle geometry which emerges through the matter of that plane as an egoic lotus. So they are actually creating the flower. They are the ones that create the flower form, so to speak, of the egoic lotus. And until they are activated, then that cannot really happen. But not immediate, and perhaps not probable. More likely, not probable. Okay, now we come to the next sentence. The echo. Yes, you have a question. Yes. The solar angel has created the archetypal form of the bud lotus. And then the stimulation of the solar angel plus the effort of the human being creates the organization, unfolding, flowering, opening of the lotus in its fuller form. And the rod of initiation is also applied. So those 3 factors, the efforts of the human being, the general sustainment of the solar angel, the efforts of the second aspect of divinity are also there, and the rod of initiation. These are the factors that create the unfolding of the full flower, but the archetype is there, created by the solar angels, not the man. Although, in a way, there is a coordination which occurs between the solar angels and the particular monad for whom the lotus is being created. Because an aspect of the monad comes down as it were, into the lotus and manifests as the central fire, namely the jewel in the lotus, the sevenfold jewel in the lotus. Okay, the echo reached the goal. So a sound went forth, proclaimed by the first degree. It's a triple sound, and it has three aspects. It goes forth 3 times. Let's check that. 3 times they sent it forth. Okay. Threefold reverberation. Now, I have a theory here, and we're going to see whether it makes sense. We are speaking here of what may be called, I say, an effective reverberation, because the echo of the sound must reach down into lower planes in order to be effective. So it might start on a very high plane, the first degree, might start on the monadic plane or even the egoic plane, but it has to reach lower planes of the triad. We note again and again the ways in which sound serves as the agent of creativity, but what is the goal? If the monadic groupings are sounding, is the goal of their sounding to be found directly in the creation of the egoic lotus? Maybe not. Or is there some triadal activation which must first occur before the egoic lotus can be formed? And I think that's the way it is. I think that what has to happen is these great lives have to send forth, maybe it's ourselves as monads, we have to send forth a certain sound which first activates the permanent atoms of the spiritual triad, or the planes of the spiritual triad, and then the egoic lotus is formed. I think it's a 1, 2, 3 process rather than direct formation of the egoic lotus. When I first started reading this, I thought it was the direct formation, but then as I began to think more deeply, I said this is just preparation for the formation of the egoic lotus. Now remember, again, the egoic lotus takes a long time to form. I was very surprised when I read this in this book. From the time the animal man can begin to make an impact upon the mental plane, that's when this egoic lotus is slowly forming. But the real activation of the lotus, the real starting of the connection between the higher and lower, that's more sudden, according to these stanzas. All right, let's go on. 3 times, they 3 times sent it forth. Now, it was a triple note, and they 3 times sent it forth. A triple note sent forth 3 times could account for the structure of the egoic lotus as described above. Because if you look at this map, you see, these are so big, what you see is that underneath the egoic lotus, what energies are there? What do you see? Look at the lines connected to each petal of the egoic lotus. Underneath the whole structure of the egoic lotus are deeper energies, aren't they? The triad itself is connected in a 9-fold way with the 9 petals of the egoic lotus, and the 10th item is what comes directly from the will aspect of the monad straight into the center of the lotus. So the triad and the monad underlie the egoic lotus and sustain its powers. So there's no powers in the egoic lotus that are not somehow supported by the higher man, namely triad and monad. Now, what does that mean in a practical sense? Well, for one thing, when we build the Antakarana and we're working on coordinating our abstract mind, coordinating our Buddhic mind and so forth, say from the time around the 2nd degree, 3rd degree, we're building the Antakarana, it means that all that work contributes to the growing of the egoic lotus too. Because as we become more triadal, the impressions of the triad are strengthened, and their power to influence the egoic lotus is also strengthened. So when we build the abstract mind, the knowledge petals are receiving more energy. When we build the Buddhic vehicle, the love petals are being stimulated. When we build the Atmic vehicle to the extent that we can, the sacrifice petals are being stimulated. You see how it works here, right? It's pretty clear, right? All these lines. And it's very interesting that the will aspect of the monad affects not only the Atmic plane directly, you see this red line? But it goes all the way down directly into the central fire of the jewel in the lotus. As a matter of fact, I have a little intuition at the moment. Maybe it's an intuition. It's like the jewel in the lotus is like the little bear. The 7 facets are like the 7 stars of the little bear. The jewel in the crown of the planetary logos is also 7-faceted, and it's like the great bear. And if you put these two together, you get the 14. A 7-faceted jewel in the crown, which is the monad, and a 7-faceted jewel within the causal body, which is the little bear, which is related to the soul. And the mystic number 14 is involved in that. Put the two together and you get the 5. And the 5, is our bridge into the 5th kingdom. This is what we are trying to achieve. Mastership is the acme, the height of membership in the 5th kingdom. Okay. Now, a triple note is sent forth. Okay. Is that that's just a thought. That these two jewels, see, we're told that the jewel in the lotus actually has 7 facets, one for each one of the rays. You start adding the numbers together, it gets interesting, because 7 and 3 is 10. So the jewel and the 3 petals of the synthesis make a 10 in the central fire. Yes. Between the what and the bear? Jewel in the crown. Well, this is another way of looking at it. You see, we're told about that the planetary logos has a diadem, which is like a headpiece with many jewels in it, and every monad is a jewel. So in our essential identity, we are the jewel in the crown. And that jewel is projected down into the center of the lotus formed by the solar angels. And see, the 9 petals are formed by the monastic permanent atom. Here, I'll show you what I mean. 9 petals are formed by the energy of the monastic permanent atom. The 3, that doesn't mean they're not fed from other places, but the general formation is from there. The 3 synthesizing petals are Buddhic in their nature. They arise through a flow of Buddhi, and Buddhi is synthesis. The jewel in the lotus is related to Atma and to the will aspect of the monad. So we are talking about each one of these jewels being 7-faceted. I guess how I would boil it down is to say the monad is a jewel, a seven-faceted jewel, giving the potential of each one of the seven rays through the seven facets. Now, what are the facets? They are simply energy structures. It's like a crystal. The monad is like a crystal. And the jewel in the lotus is also like a crystal. Add the facets together, you get 14. And if you are a true monad, one day you are placed properly in the headpiece or the crown of the planetary logos. So all of the human reflections of this having to do with royalty, wearing a crown, the crown filled with jewels of different kinds, all of these have an esoteric basis. And they are just outpictured in normal life by the kind of symbolism we use. But something deep within us tells us about these inner structures. One day we will be crowned, and one day we will form part of a greater crown in our monadic jewel nature. Okay. So, now let's understand something about the spiritual triad. I referred to page 177. The spiritual triad is a threefold structure with a ninefold differentiation. As we learn on Cosmic Fire 177, so we cannot presume that there is no triadal activation or effect in these soundings. As a matter of fact, what I think is that each one of these soundings activates a different aspect of the spiritual triad. I think that the mighty acclamation of the first degree activates the atomic part of the spiritual triad in its threefold nature. I think that the second sounding activates the Buddhic part of the spiritual triad, and the third, the monastic part. So let us see. Here is the structure of the spiritual triad as given on page 177. You may remember this chart, right? All you have to do is turn to 177 in your book, and you will see that there is a ninefold nature of the spiritual triad. We discussed this at various times. Atmic, 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 Manasic, Buddhic, Atmic, Buddhic, Manasic, Manasic, Atmic, Manasic, Buddhic, Manasic. 9 parts. And if there are 9 parts, we can understand this idea of the triple note in threefold reverberation. Because let's say that the first degree activates the atmic part of the triad. There are 3 parts to this atmic part. And if it's sent forth 3 times, perhaps it reinforces each one of those parts in one of the soundings. So what am I saying here? That the spiritual triad is somehow being prepared for that event in which the solar angels come in and link through a solemn juncture the higher triad and the lower triad. That's actually what the soul does. It links the higher and the lower triad. So in order for that to happen, the higher triad has to be prepared, and I'm saying that these soundings of the first degree, the second degree, and the third degree are activating the higher triad. Okay, now let's go on, and this is a theory, you know. So you do remember, don't you, that the triad is ninefold, and that each one of us has a particular focus in this ninefold triad. You know, you say, well, what's my soul ray? Okay, well, I have a second ray soul. It doesn't end there. Unless you go into the spiritual triad and see what is your point of focus within the spiritual triad, then we only know part of the picture. And it doesn't end there, because you have to figure out which one of 7 monadic types you are, and then it doesn't end there. You have to figure out which one of 3 major monadic types you are. So, in a way, Master DK has given us part of the ray theory, only part, and he's hinted at more. And maybe in the next dispensation of his work, we will learn more about our higher rays, which are more about our essential nature. So this threefold sounding, I say, is activating the atmic plane. Now, what plane is the atmic plane? It is the third, isn't it? 1, 2, 3. So the sounding, in my view, is coming from the higher, more abstract parts of our solar planes, either from plane 1 or plane 2. And the first sounding activates Atma in the triad. That's my thought. Now, of course, there's so many things it could be. I stand to be corrected if it's not true. Now we go on. Restless, the sphere of blue felt the vibration. What comes? Remember, the sphere of blue is feminine, correct? Because he said herself, didn't he? Herself. She responded. It's the male-female thing. The male initiates, the woman responds, whatever. That's how it's going here anyway. So what is this sphere of blue? Restless. It has something to do with the condition of the matter which has become excitable due to this planetary process which is about to occur. So restless, the sphere of blue felt the vibration. What could this mean? That's the thing. What mean you by that word? Remember the second ray technique of integration? You have to ponder. And the last sentence in it is, what mean you by that word? What are you going to do with these stanzas? You have to sit there. Every sentence is like you have to ponder what this means. It's this second ray approach, to ponder until the light comes. Okay, so what have I said here? It could be a couple of different things. When we think of the mental plane, divided as it is, the lower portion is sometimes to be associated with the color orange, fifth ray, and the higher portion with blue. Now, what's really interesting? I'm not sure if it's exact, but when we're dealing with complementary colors, what is the color that complements orange? Exactly. So, and what's really interesting? The exoteric color of the fifth ray is what? Exoteric color of the fifth ray. Remember, we're dealing with it's orange. And the esoteric color of the fifth ray, is indigo blue. He tells us. I don't know if I can find it, but sometimes you have to, oh no. Okay, let's just say yes. And then I'll try this again. Okay. Hopefully. Good. Okay, so esoteric fifth ray color. Let's see what happens. Color. Mental plane, esoteric orange, a blend of yellow, etc. Well, you might just have to take my word for it. Sorry. Anyway, I think I know where I can find it. Maybe around page 420. I'm not sure. No, here it's different. Here the exoteric color is yellow. The esoteric color of the fifth ray is indigo. Esoteric color indigo. But it says esoteric. Are they both esoteric? Something's wrong. It should be exoteric. See, this is a typo, isn't it? In your book, do you have this? Yeah, it's exo first. So look at this. This is a typo. This should be exoteric, as far as I can understand. If you have your Esoteric Psychology book with you, Volume 1, just check page 419. And see, does it say exo or eso? But anyway, orange is conventionally associated with the fifth ray. And it's also a color prominent among the solar angels. It is the only color which occurs as frequently in the body of the solar angel, of the egoic lotus. So orange is the color of flame, and these beings are called flames, lords of the flame, orange. Okay. Now, trying to get back to this, okay. So the mental plane can be divided into a higher blue and a lower orange, is one way of thinking of it. So if we are dealing with the creation of the egoic lotus for the monads of the fourth creative hierarchy, then that creation occurs upon the higher mental plane. Now let's just say eventually. In other words, where does the solar angel concentrate his energy? Not upon the lower mental plane, correct? Except, of course, that the solar angel does do one thing upon the lower mental plane. One thing that's very important. See, what is the spark of mind? What is it? It's a part of the solar angel, isn't it? So where is that spark of mind directed? When the solar angel decides to inform with a fragment of itself this little universe of the human being, it directs the spark of mind into the nature of that lower being. And, it does affect the lower mental plane, doesn't it? It does stimulate in a special way with the spark of mind the mental unit, doesn't it? So there's a special activation of the mental unit through the spark of mind, and that's something that the solar angel does in relation to the lower mental plane. And the solar angel also actually anchors an aspect of itself in the physical brain of man, etheric and physical brain of man. So it's like the solar angel reaches out in various ways to activate the constitution of the man. It gets the petals ready to go. It supports the jewel in the lotus. It activates the mental unit, and it actually implants an aspect of itself in the brain. Well, Descartes said the seat of the soul was the pineal gland. So my impression is that it is the etheric area surrounding the pineal gland and the pineal gland itself. That is my estimation of it. The solar angel is very much then within us in its various extensions. Okay. So we're trying to figure out what is this sphere of blue. I've been talking about the higher mental plane and blue, right? In one way. Now, in speaking of restlessness, we may be speaking of the substance and Davic lives to be found upon the higher mental plane, which are in a state of unnatural activation because something's about to happen within their sphere. A lotus is about to be created. The solar angels are about to enter and substand their area. Are these devas conscious? I think not, perhaps. It's just simply substantial. That's what they're doing. You're correct. They are somehow unconsciously or somehow preparing the field. That's why they're restless. The mental sphere is associated with the activity. With the activity of the number 3 is often considered restless because that's what layer is that on the cosmic physical plane? What is the mental plane? Well, how can I ask this question so it makes sense? If you look at the 7 levels of the cosmic physical plane, one of them is called dense, one of them is called liquid, 4 of them are called etheric. What's the one I've left out? dense, air, gas. It's the gaseous level. And we know about gas that it has volatility and restlessness connected with it, as does the number 3, and it's the third plane from below. So it is a naturally volatile, moving sphere, which is even more so now because it's the center of focus of a great creative act. Okay, so the sphere is, I don't know, I wrote something wrong here. The sphere may, in application, may be restless as well because the time I should have said in. Well, I'm not sure that makes sense. The sphere may be restless as well because the time has come for change within it. Okay. Now, so the sphere of blue could be the higher levels of the mental plane whereon an egoic lotus is to be formed. But there's another way of looking at this also. I don't know if you remember, the question was, is Buddhi violet, blue, or yellow? Do you remember that question the Tibetan asked? Is Buddhi violet, blue, or yellow? And he called these sort of unanswerable questions. Well, that's it. It's a relative thing. To the solar logos, Buddhi is violet. To the planetary logos, Buddhi is blue. To man, yellow. Okay. So basically, we were looking at the sequence of the colors. And the sequence of the colors went something like orange. It went something like yellow, orange, blue, violet. As if yellow was Buddhic, orange is mental, blue is astral, violet is etheric. Then, if that is the case, and we take, let's say, we take man, Buddhic, mental, astral, etheric, yellow, orange, blue, violet, and we take that sequence, and we lift it up to the logoic plane. What do we have? Logoic yellow, monadic orange, flame, atmic blue, and Buddhic violet. So the atmic plane becomes blue, and interestingly enough, its symbol is considered to be water. Have you seen that? I mean, you might, I doubted it myself, but then in this chart, it's present. And here it is. Here is the atmic level, and its symbol is water. Well, that's another possibility, that the atmic sphere may be considered the sphere of blue. And we're talking about activating the different parts of the triad. Anyway, there is an answering. She roused herself and hastened to the call. Now, there's the hint in the word herself. It's a feminine pronoun. It seems to reflect a receptive field responding to the energies of a superior, more elevated, more positive, i.e. masculine field. And maybe some of you remember in the Kabbalah that the kether is the crown, is the logoic plane. Chokhmah is the monadic plane connected with Jupiter, and Bina is the third area, and it's considered to be feminine, and it's related to the atmic plane. So from a certain perspective, Atma can be considered feminine in relation to the higher two planes. So there is a possibility that this Atmic field is the field of blue. I'm not, it also has the color green associated with it, so I'm not denying that. The question is, who responds to the first degree, the second degree, the third degree? Who is going to respond? My theory at the moment is that the three levels of the spiritual triad are responding, preparing for the coming of the solar angels. And these three levels of the spiritual triad underlie the structure of the egoic lotus. So really the egoic lotus is being reached, but first comes the triadal preparation. So our task will be to determine whether the three soundings with which we seem to be dealing affect the higher mental plane directly, or whether they first affected the triadal levels, which are, we learn from the various charts, directly connected with the egoic lotus structure, and as we have seen on number 8. So if we affect the triad, we do affect the egoic lotus. But what I say here is the egoic lotus is not yet built. So how can the egoic lotus be affected? See, in other words, let's just say here, but it seems the egoic lotus is not yet built until the solar angels can do their work. Okay. Now we go on. Yes. The sphere of blue? It is a mother aspect. Okay, but this is not incorrect what you're saying, but what we need is something definite in the fifth ray sense. There is a sphere of blue. It is a structural part of the cosmic physical plane. What is it? See, in general, of course, it is the mother aspect. Something is responding. And the mother aspect can be found associated with different levels. What I'm trying to say is the mother aspect can be associated with Atma. The mother aspect can be associated with the higher mental plane. And even the whole cosmic physical plane can be looked at in a way as the mother aspect or material. Yes, but what I'm trying to do is locate the specific area which the echoing sound reaches to call forth the response. She responded. Who's the she? That's what we're looking for. And I'm saying at the moment it looks to me either Atmic level being the first area of response, or it can be the higher mental plane. I'm just not sure yet. I'm thinking about the future days in the new esoteric schools. And I'm thinking about how a job like this, what we're trying to figure out, would be the assignment for a whole year or a whole semester. I'm thinking about the research projects which will be done in the teaching in these new esoteric schools. And here we're just dumping into it and we're saying, okay, could be this, could be that. This is very sketchy. One day, very exhaustive research will be accomplished in these schools. And we will actually be able to take the time to determine exactly what you were asking. Okay, now the first degree has sounded forth. What is it? I gave several alternatives. Whatever it is, it's high beings. I believe it's above the triadal level. Let's just say, let's just say the soundings are coming from high beings, very probably above the triadal level. That's my present thought on the matter. Now we come to the second sounding. Look at the words. The second, with wise insistence, hearing the first sound go forth. I'll read the whole thing. The second, with wise insistence, hearing the first sound forth, knowing the hour had likewise come, also knowing the hour had come, echoed the sound or note quadruple. This fourfold reverberation circled the gamut of the spheres. Again it was sent forth. 3 times note was sounded, pealing across the heavens. At the third intoning came the answer to the call. Vibrant as a key attuned, the eternal primary replied. The blue to the dense one answered and responded to the need. So it's getting a little involved here, isn't it? Okay, what thoughts are suggested to you as you read this before we get into the attempted analysis of it? What thoughts come to you? What about the formation of the very first sentence? Are you told anything when you read the words, the second with wise insistence? Just those words. You say, yes, the second ray. And what about the second ray? I mean, it is the second, but you get another hint there, don't you? Yes, yes, you get the hint of the word wise, don't you? This is a wise response. What is the second ray? The ray of what? Love and wisdom. So right there, there's the idea of the wisdom of the second ray. So we can begin to trace this to some kind of monadic source. You know, sort of a second ray monadic source, probably. And of course, I almost said the second with wise persistence. We're told something about the methods of the first and second ray, how they act. The first ray goes crashing through, we're told. Somewhere in the chapter on Taurus or something, you know, where the first ray just rouses itself and breaks through the obstacles. What does the second ray do? Yeah, it embraces, but it also keeps going, keeps going, keeps going. Never let up, never give in, just keep moving steadily forward with no let up. That's the insistence, that's the persistence of the second ray. So the second ray with wise insistence, because it has its will focused, and that's a will word. The word insistence is a will word. So we're dealing here with an agent of will. The process is in sequence for second, third. We're dealing, okay, notice wise insistence as it suggests the second ray of wisdom, and that quality of the second ray which persisting never lets up. So what was I going to say here about that second ray? Darn it. Well, I had something in my mind. It's gone now. From whatever dimension or plane these soundings may be occurring, yes, the word insistence, that's what I was going to say. The word insistence is a will word, so we know that the soundings are occurring from a source of will, which, you know, kind of makes you think we're dealing with monadic soundings. And because there's only 3 of them, you kind of wonder whether it's not all happening from the highest level. Now, the first sounding was threefold. The second sounding is fourfold. What do you make out of that? What is suggested to you by the fact that it's a quadruple sound, a fourfold sound, whereas the first one was a threefold sound? The numbers, well, threefold suggests the triangle, fourfold suggests the square. But what about the planes and where the soundings echo to? In other words, the soundings are echoing. What are they affecting? Remember my theory, the first sounding affected what plane? Atmic. Atmic, yeah. Atomic and atmic sound alike, but the first sounding affected the atmic plane. And what number is the atmic plane? 3. Now, the second sounding is quadruple. So what will it affect? The Buddhic plane, which is the 4th. See what I mean about the idea of preparing the triad? So these soundings are somehow getting the upper triad ready to link with the lower triad when the solar angel provides enough magnetism to bring them together. Okay, so that's a theory. A triple note would correlate with activation upon the third or atmic plane. A quadruple note would be suitable for the 4th plane or Buddhic plane. For the, let's call it activation. Activation of the 4th. You begin to see in a creative process how very orderly in a way it is. It's not just like throw everything together. You know, you have these artists sometimes who'd like to take a bucket of paint and they just throw it at the wall. It's all very spontaneous. Maybe something interesting will come out, but that's not the way nature seems to be working. Everything is proceeding in an orderly manner according to number. Okay. This fourfold reverberation circled the gamut of the spheres. Now, what spheres do we normally think of? This fourfold reverberation circled the gamut of the spheres. Well, you know, normally, if you think of the music of the spheres, what do you think of? Normally. Space and the planets, don't you? Just like Kepler, the planets are revolving around the sun and they have their own notes and they're making music. That's what we normally think of the music of the spheres. Okay, this is a planetary process. And when something is occurring on a planet, do the other planets know about it? They're a member of a group together, aren't they? So they certainly know, and they're even contributing to it, aren't they? Because every planet in our solar system is represented within our Earth. Isn't that so? Macrocosm, microcosm, isn't it so? I mean, when you think about all those planetary chains, and they're called the Jupiter, the Venus, the blah-blah-blah chain, right? The different planets are represented, aren't they? And what about the globes? The Venus globe, the Jupiter globe, the Mercury globe, the Mars globe, right? They're all represented in one way or another. So every planet out there is right here too. So we say reverberation circled the gamut of the spheres, but there are many different spheres. In a solar system, what are the spheres? They are called what? Just planets, right? Planetary schemes. In a planetary scheme, what are the spheres? There are a number of them. What about, okay, is a planetary chain a sphere? It is. Is a planetary globe a sphere? It is. Right? Is a plane a sphere? Yes. Is a ray a sphere? Yes. All these spheres. So the gamut means like the whole thing. So all these spheres are hearing what's going on. Okay, the term circled is a second-rate term. Again, I stand, a point within a circle, and yet myself. Do you know where that comes from? It's an integration technique, right? Again, I stand, a point within a circle, and yet myself. The love of love must dominate and not the love of being loved. Remember that? That one? Because since so many people here are on the second ray, we should know that one, right? That is the technique of integration for the second ray. And remember, in the first ray technique of integration, it says, for you, there must be not a circle, but a line. Remember that one? For you there must be, because a circle is the second ray, a line is the first ray. So when it says here, this fourfold reverberation circled the gamut of the spheres, that's a second ray allusion. Not illusion, but allusion, reference. Let's see what else. These are just, thoughts I put down. Are we dealing with the spheres of the 7 groups perusic on the monadic plane? Maybe. We seem to be within the body of the Earth scheme and dealing with intraplanetary matters. So perhaps it is unlikely that the spheres are the spheres of other planetary logoi or beyond. But, yet, this possibility cannot be denied because an important something, event, yes, an important event within the Earth scheme could be communicated to the other planetary spheres and to the solar logos, who is certainly involved in the creation of the 4th kingdom within the Earth scheme. Now, it is said that all beings in our solar system, all conscious beings, maybe I should say self-conscious beings, in our solar system connect via what plane? All conscious beings, self-conscious beings in our solar system at least connect via what plane? Well, yes, let's just call it the mental plane. Yeah, that's correct, mental plane. Yet, the Buddhic plane is eminently, how do you spell eminent? Is eminently the plane of connection because of the love-wisdom magnetic aspect, right? Okay, so we seem to be speaking about the Buddhic plane now. Is there a special relation, or any relation, of the solar angels to the Buddhic plane? Because that is a quality which these solar angels really seem to carry, don't they? They are somehow sons of Buddhi. And when you look at the map over here, take a look at where the word solar angels and Agnishvatas locates itself. Right there on the Buddhic plane. So the Buddhic plane is very important in this whole creative process, and the magnetism and love of the Buddhic plane is a connecting factor. Okay. Again, the sounding was sent forth. 3 times the note was sounded, pealing across the heavens. Now, what about the word pealing? Pealing. It's not like you peel an apple, right? I'm not even sure how to spell the difference. But you can peel an apple, right? But this is not it, is it? What does the word peeling mean here?
Well, we have a word in Danish that sounds almost the same.
Yeah?
To run very fast.
So it...
To run very fast.
Okay, I'm so sorry, but a bell peals. Is that related? The pealing of a bell. Ding, ding, ding. The sun is a great second ray bell, pealing the note G. So, in other words, the church bell, the school bell, right? Not the school trumpet, unless it's military school, or maybe the church trumpet if it's a militant church. But the whole idea, look, when you want to go to war, you sound trumpets, you shoot cannons. When you want to go to school or church, you ring a bell. It's the second ray. So the idea of pealing forth in waves suggests the second ray. And it suggests a circular kind of motion which is connected with the second ray and with the inclusive Buddhic plane. So peels, I think that's very interesting. I hope I'm spelling it right and not like peeling an orange. I lose connection with that. So now 3 times the sound, it's a quadruple form, quadruple sound, and 3 times the sound goes forth. Well, we go back to page 177 of A Treatise on Cosmic Fire, and we find that yes, it should go forth 3 times, because on the Buddhic plane too, there are 3 aspects. It's a quadruple sound 3 times. Atmic, Buddhic, Monastic, right? And the other one, from the great first degree, was a triple sound 3 times coming forth. Now, obviously, the monastic sound is, maybe it's going to be 5-fold. I don't know. Maybe it's not even given here. But it should be 5-fold, and it should peel forth 3 times to activate each one of the aspects. Okay. Now, so it went across the heavens. It went across the heavens. Let's see what happens here. 3 times the note was sounded pealing across the heavens. Well, we can take that within the planet or outside the planet. It just means a wide expression. At the 3rd toning came the answer to the call. Now, this is a little bit, interpreting this may be a little difficult. At the 3rd intoning, does that mean the 3rd intoning of the 2nd sound or the 3rd sound? Which one does it mean? At the 3rd intoning came the answer to the call, vibrant as a key, attuned, meaning that if you're properly attuned, you have free vibration. The eternal primary replied. The blue to the dense one answered and responded to the need. Now, I just have to ask, when I looked at this, I said, oh, how will we interpret this? I have some ideas. What ideas come to you before I share the ideas that came to me? At the 3rd intoning came the answer to the call. Now, what are these calls? The 1st degree calls, the 2nd degree calls. Is the 3rd intoning the 3rd degree calling? Is that what it means? Is it an intoning? Or is it the 3rd sounding of the note that peeled across the heavens? I like to think of it as the 3rd degree. At the 3rd intoning came the answer to the call. Vibrant is a key attuned, because when a key is not attuned, it's not vibrant. If you have you're playing the violin and you have a soggy string, but when it's tuned up within its context, then you have a beautiful free vibration. It's beautiful. Vibrant is a key attuned. Now here comes the problem. The eternal primary replied. See, look, a word like first can mean high or low, right? 1st degree, low. But obviously, 1st plane, high. A word like primary. Okay, there are 2 great rays manifesting through our solar system right now. What are their names? It's not a number. In the beginning of Cosmic Fire, some 5 or 6 years ago, or whenever we started, we read of 2 rays. One was green, one was blue. What were their names? Okay. One was called the divine ray. Which one would that be? Well, okay, you would be right in a way, because the word divine means ray 1, but we're not that far yet. We're only in the 2nd solar system, aren't we? So the word divine means the great 2nd ray of this solar system. Now, what was the name given to the 3rd ray in Cosmic Fire? It's an interesting name, and once you get it in your head, you'll see why I'm driving at this. Primordial ray. Remember? The great third ray, primordial ray. Why primordial? It's standard, did you say? Started it. It was the first to start. Right. So it is the foundation, and the word prime, which generally means one, primus, first, is the lowest. But it started first. And that's the interesting thing about this third ray. Third ray, in a way, is oldest, lowest, and it starts first. And the first ray is newest and starts last. So in a way, the first ray is not yet primary. The third ray is primary. Okay. Now, so then when I look, vibrant as a key attuned, the eternal primary replied. Primordial? Primary? Can it be that instead of looking toward the monad or some high thing to understand the meaning of eternal primary, we have to look at what is primordial, what came first, what is always there as a basis, namely matter and the third ray. Yeah. Well, in the next solar system, well, here's what happens. And ray 2 can never be primary. Okay. Remember what happens after the third initiation. You look at the egoic lotus, and it has 9 petals. What happens to the outer petals after the third initiation? They begin to disintegrate and dissolve. So that foundation falls away, and ray 2 then becomes the foundation. We're told, yes, there will be evil in the next solar system. And you know what ray it will come in on? The second ray. Exactly. It'll be the old ray. I don't know what will happen with third ray. Maybe it'll be just so totally integrated it won't be an issue at all. But there will be a lot of unresolved issues with attachment, which will prevent the will from manifesting. And the will has to manifest in the next solar system. So the second ray will be, in a way, primary when that solar system begins. Exactly. Not allowing... That's it. You don't allow a beneficent destruction to occur because you're too attached to form. Well, look, it already is happening. You know, in a way, the first ray in our solar system almost doesn't belong. The solar logos somehow, in one of the stanzas, it showed that he deflected the first ray from coming into his solar system. It's still here, of course, but he deflected a very full entrance of the first ray because he was working out second ray purposes. So he could only allow so much first ray to come in. But in the next solar system, the second ray will be in the same position as the third ray is now. Most of our trouble now is the problems with the third ray. Materialism, greed, manipulation of matter, external ideas, not getting to the essence. And in the Great Bear, the third star is out of alignment. It's too low. The third star in the Great Bear is too low, which is a graphic way of demonstrating that the third ray is out of alignment in our present local cosmic system. Now, you kind of wonder whether things will change around with the Great Bear by that time where something will show the second ray is in difficulty. Okay, so the eternal primary could well be matter itself and the foundational call. Okay, the third intoning would proceed from those beings, third degree, first degree. Okay. Now, so we are speaking of, are we speaking of a response which comes from the lower worlds? That's what I've been asking. And I say, yeah, the word eternal primary is enigmatic. You could think of something relatively high, but the primordial ray gives us the hint. So in a way, matter as the residue of the first major solar system could be considered the eternal primary, because it was there first and stays there until we do something about it. What's the whole job in our solar system right now with respect to what is primordial? And we're not there yet. We haven't done it. It's happening on this planet. What's our job? See, we have to redeem the primary, don't we? The third ray is out of vibration with the second ray intentions. So the primordial ray has to be made a sub-ray of the divine ray. And what's happening on our planet, let me ask? Look at our planetary rays. Right? Soul ray, our planet. Ray. Personality ray. 3. The whole drama is being acted out somewhat microcosmically right on our planet. The primordial ray is becoming the sub-ray of the divine ray right on our planet. And that's why our planet is such a place of crisis, because it mirrors what's happening in the life of the solar logos at this time. So you were going to say, Anna? Yes, from knowledge to wisdom. Yes, knowledge is very important and wisdom is intuitive. So knowledge is sublimated into wisdom. That is a clue. That's very important. That's correct. A combination of ray 3 and 2. Yes, that's right. From knowledge to wisdom, which is in a way kind of Venus-like, isn't it? Is what is to happen with the third ray as it becomes subordinate to the second. From knowledge to wisdom. That's a very good point. Okay. All right. Now here comes the statement. The blue to the dense one answered. Well, who was the dense one? And responded to the need. Who has the need? Who's got the need here? The blue to the dense one answered and responded to the need. Who needs what? Do the higher worlds need anything? They might, if they're considered relatively to be lower worlds to still higher worlds, but in this case, the higher worlds are the higher worlds. Who needs? Someone needs something. Exactly. And from the solar logoic or planetary logoic perspective, what are the dense worlds? Do we have to get all the way down to the mineral kingdom to reach the dense worlds? Well, humanity is part of it, and part of humanity is part of it, not all of humanity. What is the dense physical body of the solar logos? Okay, well, this is a very important thing. You realize that the dense physical body of the solar logos is our entire etheric, physical, astral, and mental plane, including the higher aspect of it. The dense physical body of the solar logos is all 3 planes, including the higher mental plane. Now, that's sometimes not realized. The dense physical body of our planetary logos is what? Let the group see that all the 18 fires die down and that the lesser lives return unto the reservoir of life. Let the group see that all the 18 fires die down. What is the dense physical body of our planetary logos? It's 18. The hint is in the word 18. It's the 18 lower subplanes, including, of course, the 4 lower mental subplanes, 7, 7, 4, 18. So what is the dense one? Well, the blue to the dense one answered and responded to the need. Well, whether the blue is the higher mental plane, responding to the lower 18 subplanes. That's one way of looking at it. Or whether the blue is the atmic plane responding to the dense etheric physical plane. Something from the high is responding to the low. And let me show you the map. What is the relationship, what is the reflective relationship of Atma, Buddhi, and Manas? Here it is. If you do a reflective connection, then Atma is reflected by etheric physical. Buddhi is reflected by astral, and the higher mental is reflected by the lower mental. So it's quite possible the blue is somewhere up here. If the blue is Atma, from a kind of interesting perspective, I'm not taking away its green nature, then the really dense one is down here. This is really dense. On the other hand, from the planetary logoic perspective, the lower 18 subplanes are dense, and the blue would be up here somewhere. It would be the higher mental or atmic, one of the higher sources, and the full 18 lower subplanes would respond. Okay, we're almost there. Yes, I know. And the blue responded to the dense one. The blue to the dense one answered and responded to the need. So this, first of all, the blue is feminine. And the blue responds to what? The first degree. The blue responds. We've said, okay, it's the higher mental plane. Could be the soul. And now the soul area looks down. I won't call it the soul yet because the solar angels haven't come in and made what we call the soul, right? So either the atmic plane, the spiritual will, is somehow trying to meet the need of the lower worlds, or the higher mental plane, where the soul will be found, is trying to meet the needs of the lower worlds. It depends on what we call dense. Now, normally, we usually say, oh, this is dense. These lower three subplanes, this is really dense. Well, from the systemic point of view, that's true. And you could include the etheric levels. But the minute you get into the cosmic side of it, then dense is all these lower 18 subplanes. And they have a very big need because they are made of lunar elemental substance. And they have a need for the higher energies. So somehow the blue, which represents the great second ray, it represents the great theme of our solar system, whereas these lower 18, sum to 9 equals 3, 18 equals 9 equals 3, they relate to the third aspect. The third aspect down here needs the second aspect. So the blue has to respond to these lower dense factors. And I tend to think that we're talking about individualization here. So I tend to think, if I can just make this, maybe, okay, okay, blue responded, dense one. Okay, from a perspective, there's a definite connection between the atmic and the systemic physical plane, etc., etc. But the dense may be, from the solar systemic perspective, the lower 18 or even 21 subplanes. The 18 have a real need for blue. Just as the third ray has a need for the second ray in a second in a second ray solar system. Okay, now we are going to go, Martha. Don't worry, we are going. But before we go, just something for you to digest over lunch is this. Here we go. Attune, attune, attune. Okay. The moment Manvantaric for which had waited all the triads, the hour that marked the solemn point of juncture, arrived within the scope of time, and lo, the work was done. The hour for which the 7 groups perusic, each vibrant to the sounding of the word, seeking the adding of the power, had waited for millennia, passed in a flash of time, and lo, the work was done. The first degree in mighty acclamation, deeming the hour propitious, sounded the triple note in threefold reverberation. The echo reached the goal. They 3 times sent it forth. Restless, the sphere of blue felt the vibration, and answering roused herself and hastened to the call. There is a connection between the atmic and the higher mental plane. When you reach the 3rd initiation, you sometimes anticipate what the 5th would be like. So you jump, in a way, from the higher mental plane to the atmic plane. There is a connection. 2 blues, in a way. And finally, the second, with wise insistence, hearing the first sound forth, knowing the hour had likewise come, echoed the sound or note quadruple. This 4-fold reverberation circled the gamut of the spheres. Again it was sent forth. 3 times the note was sounded, pealing across the heavens. At the 3rd intoning came the answer to the call. Vibrant as a key attuned, the eternal primary replied. The blue to the dense one answered and responded to the need. The need of the dense will be met by all of this second ray activity that's going on with the awakening of the heart of the planetary logos at this time. Okay, now we can go eat. See you, I don't know, about 3 minutes after 2. Okay, everybody, those of you who are still here, and some of you must surely be asleep, we're going to take a break. And that break will last for about an hour and 10 minutes, something like that. And then we will continue with this 5th stanza. So as you can see, there are many modes of possible interpretation. Difficult to fix some of these numbers in the exact context where they belong. But we try to make sense out of this, and overall what we have is the preparation in the higher spheres for the moment of individualization. We still have to determine the source of the 1st, 2nd, and 3rd degrees as they are sounding forth. They seem to be fundamental monadic types, but they could also be 3 types of lives as well. They could be shambolic lives as well. They could be the Kumaras, the Ray Lords, and Lords that represent the 3rd ray. We have the spirits of darkness, the spirits of the rays, and the Fohatic sons of Fohat. Anyway, there's a higher 3. They are sounding forth, and they are causing, it seems, preparation within the triad so that the intermediaries, the divine intermediaries, the solar angels can enter and create the junction, the solemn juncture between the higher triad and the lower triad. Okay, heady stuff, but it is possible to fathom it somewhat. Mistakes will be made, no question about it, but we will only develop the abstract powers of mind leading to intuition by forging ahead and at least making some interpretive attempts. So we will see you in another hour and 10 minutes or so, hour and 15 minutes at most. Those of you who are not yet asleep probably will be. Some will be waking up. We'll see what will happen. Nice to see you all here, and hopefully some clarity will come about these stanzas. We may have to wait another 500 years to get them exact, but some clarity will begin to enter. At least they will not be complete terra incognita for us. Okay, we'll see you a little bit. Remember, leave your computers on, and I'll put myself on mute here, and we will resume with a continuation of the interpretation of this stanza. Stanza number 5. See you soon.